tell me the perspective of what happened yesterday from your eyes when I was showing you something I had been working on for some time now, but then all of a sudden, things changed. Like, what in your mind, what is your take on the whole situation when things changed?
My take in it was more so kind of like acknowledging, but also, what's that word? Like giving awe to what you have made yesterday, and it comes to the bubble maps. And to me, the way that you're thinking and the way how you take concepts of perspectives and emotions and logical thinking, it's really eye-opening, and it's really bizarre. Not in a bad way, but kind of like, whoa, like, yeah, we all have different perspectives, but if we take those perspectives and think of it in a logical way of not like putting the emotion aside, facing towards it, but just thinking of what we have, what we've been through, and what we will achieve, it's a very good construct of what we're supposed to be thinking of, and just kind of like thinking of the good details with it. But with what happened yesterday and seeing the bubble maps and seeing kind of like how you're explaining it in a very detailed way, it made me thought of the subject of English. Not saying that it was English, but it's just kind of like related to English, because this is what I did in college. I've done some creative writing. We have a topic that we had to go in depth into, and when I brought it up, I just kind of like saw the spark in your eyes that you had for what you like were holding just gone, and you didn't want to do anything no more. And I felt bad because you were really, eager and very dedicated to what you were doing. And I thought that was really fucking cool, because I rarely or never have that type of experience, kind of like having a way of thinking, and just kind of like you're so obsessed with it. It's almost kind of like it's your new goal, like it's your new life expectancy. But I felt bad because I thought like I said something, which I kind of did, and that brought you down. Kind of like, oh, you're looking down on me. Like, oh no, that wasn't the case. I was just saying what I thought at the time, but then you dropped the whole idea, like, oh, I don't want to do this no more. And I got sad because, oh no, I took something away from Moch when he was so kind of like 100% about it, but now he doesn't want to do anything about it because of me and what I said. And it felt like I extinguished something inside and just kind of snuffed it out, and I want to do something about it. Kind of like, oh, like if I hadn't said what I said, Moch would still be, invested of what he was thinking about or what he was doing. So in my mind, it's kind of like, ah, shit, like me and my big mouth. But it wasn't anything to do with criticizing, just wanting to relate. And it made me feel sad because when you explain like, oh, like how you like why you're feeling this and what it eventually would lead to, and it would most likely lead you to not want to share your ideas and thoughts with me no more. And genuinely, I love your thoughts and ideas, and I love the eagerness I see in your eyes every time you do have a thought and you play it out. And you just kind of like experiment, and you kind of like tinker with it. But it almost makes me not want to like speak on anything, but kind of like just acknowledge what you have done when you do give me an idea, just in case I don't like jeopardize it and lose it. But I know that's not the case because naturally it's impossible for me to know what's right and what's wrong. Like, it happens, and when it does happen, I kind of want to just be there and explain why I said that, or what, like, probably something was misunderstood, or kind of took into a different way, and just explain where that could lead to. And naturally, I just feel bad for the entire thing. Kind of like you lost all, like, it's almost like me taking your energy away of like, oh, you were so sporadic and like you want to run a marathon and whatnot, but then I say something and all that energy kind of like dissipates and goes away. So I know in due time that I'm still kind of wary about what I have to say, because naturally I don't want to make you feel that way, and just kind of like not in a way look at you down in the way kind of like what felt yesterday.
Yeah. Because, and I'm going to re-explain because they don't know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more that I came up with a bubble map to help, break out of your perspective. And I have been working on that for a few days now, kind of staying up late at night till like 3 or 4 in the morning, hyper obsessing over it, trying to figure out how can I make this so solid, or at least on a good foundation, that it could apply to anyone and anything, and kind of causes you to push yourself beyond what you're used to. And usually when I get into those hyper obsessive modes, it becomes like my baby, my child, because I'm putting so much energy, so much work, so much thought, and I keep on like trying over and over to figure it out or to teach it like in its own way. But yesterday, one of my good friends recently, he asked to see my work, and I was kind of excited because I was like, oh, people usually don't ever ask to see my work like that. And my friend here, he asked to see it too, like, oh, what's going on? Like, he was curious as well. And I was telling him about it, and I was super excited. I kind of was just like, this is what I've been working on, like just that energy. But then he kind of compared it to English. And to me personally, I don't have the best experiences with English because I don't know, I never got into it. So kind of seeing that my work is compared to English, it kind of felt like this is not comparable to English. Like, this is about the mind. This is about, something completely different than words and punctuation. Because to me, my definition was words, punctuation. You read something, just like that's the baseline. But you took it a different way. Like, your definition of English was different. And could you tell, like, what that was? Like, your definition of English and how it applied to the whole conversation.
Well, the way I was taught and how and how I would describe English is kind of like, it's not real. Well, to me with English, I know when it comes to words, vocabulary, punctuations, grammar, but mostly I've been working in English is creative and very detailed cognitive thinking of a topic or any text that was given to us or what we have read. And mostly of just like a passage or an idea that we're given through either a book, like on a website, or like what someone has told us like in person, and we just sit with it and we let it stir in our minds to think of what more depth detail that it has, that it holds together. Like say like, oh, like the topic is like, oh, we are nothing and the earth is going to keep spinning around whether we die or whether we live and whatnot. But like, well, besides that, like what more depth in like intel goes into that? Just like taking an idea and just dissecting it. Taking like it's like taking apart a car. What makes the car run, or what other components are in a car? Like you're giving the idea of the car, and you as the thinker or mechanic have to take apart take apart that car and see what makes it run, or see in the perspective of that person of why they said it. Like, oh, they said it because of this. Or you can take a step further, like you can make it into your own idea. Like, oh, like he said this because of that. Well, I think of this, and this is why I think of that. Just kind of like play with it
Mhm.
and just like find out what makes it run. That's what I kind of like think about English. And when I saw those bubble maps, I did a lot of bubble maps when I was in middle school in English. I mean, middle school and high school. So it just brought me back to that. And not gonna lie, yesterday it made me feel like a child, like being scolded at, like, oh, like kind of like being told like the words kind of like meant like took away something that holds something. And kind of like, oh, like just don't say anything at all next time, okay? And then it will feel better. And I'm like, oh, okay.
So we had different definitions of what English was originally. I had associated my bad experiences with English, and I was taken back to a place of comparison and in my early childhood years where if I came up with an idea, my guardians, my parents would kind of like compare it and downplay it a little bit and kind of say, oh, someone has already done that, or it reminds me of this. So I began to internalize all this at once, to the point where unconsciously, and well, not unconsciously, more of just accidentally put that on to him, where I was brought back to a moment in time where I was so eager about my work and almost vulnerable that when someone says something that does not showcase the whole entirety of the environment or concept, it kind of, in my mind, pushes it down, like you don't understand it, or it's not an original thought. And so when all that happened, I immediately went back into survival mode of when someone has done that to me or downplays my ideas, I kind of begin to shut down and begin to think of, okay, maybe I should have not shown this person my ideas because these are important to me. And since they can't see how important it is to me, then why am I going to speak on it at all? So I was taking it from a place of hurt rather than seeing it for what it was. And it caused a lot of pain on both ends because I was taken back to a place in time. He was taken a place in time too, but also was scolded and even punished for being part of a conversation. And eventually, as I was going through it, I kind of realized that, like, right off the bat after I said what I said of like, oh, I'm gonna stop with the idea right now. I don't want to continue it right now. I'm gonna stop it. I don't have any motivation or like to do it anymore. I'm done with it. That was more of just me just talking of like survival mode. And then I took like a minute and I used my bubble map of like the general basis of what happened was he asked for my idea and he ended up comparing it to English. And then it went into, oh, my work is not original. Going into, people don't understand or that my work doesn't have any value. But then the baseline was they were trying to relate like English bubble maps. They did come from that topic in school. So bubble maps came from English usually, tree maps, stuff like that, cause and effects, all that stuff. And then the middle ground was he was just trying to relate to in the conversation and put into it. And as soon as I did that, because it took me like a few minutes mentally, I was able to come back down of he's not trying to hurt me. He's not trying to push down my ideas. And I began to explain that to you. When I began to explain that to you, what did you think or how did you feel when I said those things and kind of my perspective?
It was, well, it's kind of like we both knew what, like, no one was in the wrong. It was just like a bad coincidence of why it happened. Kind of like it just felt like explaining it felt like explaining two different perspectives that we both didn't know about each other. And then when we finally explained to each other of why we like said those things or how we actually felt, it felt kind of like more at ease because now we came to an understanding like, oh, okay, like this is why it happened and this is what it actually meant. There was no malice, there was no kind of like criticism, there was no negative comments about it. It felt kind of like relieving that we said both our parts, were able to talk it out and we're able to explain everything more in depth and detail. But there's still kind of like that 1% in me, kind of like it's just a bit wary of what I'm gonna say and how it might interpret into Mochi's eyes or your eyes. Not necessarily taking like walking on eggshells, but kind of like being considerate for you. And just kind of like just thinking on how you would feel about it.
So what would you say from how things were intense, kind of like, oh no, I ruined this. Like, would you say that was 100% like I'm just anxious, sad, disappointed in myself? And then versus after when I explained that, how much did it go down? How much relief did it cause you?
I think at the breaking point, not breaking point, but at the point of kind of like where the problem kind of arise to where it was. I think like at 100%, it felt like I felt very kind of like small, or kind of like in a sense feel like a child again. Me mentioning it, like, because I know there was like a few times in my childhood where something that I would do say, either it's been taken like why would you say that, or that saying or what you just said like does not matter.
Yeah.
Or next time just don't talk at all.
Yeah.
So that's what I felt like at the 100% part. Like, oh no, like I got punished, and I feel small about it. But now, kind of like now, like us going through everything, it took that weight off. Like it went down to 30%. Like okay, like we all have like that moment in time where something that we do say might be taken into some other way that a person's perspective would lead into. And again, then the rest of the percentage is just kind of like reassuring, like it's okay, like no one's at fault, you know, like it it's not your fault because I didn't know and I wasn't criticizing, just trying to add more into the conversation.
Mm.
And by you mentioning like, oh, it's okay also because I took that in a way how I felt back then, but using of what I thought of and just taking perspectives on that, I realized that it's a feeling that comes and goes. So it's no one's at fault play.
Because I know that when everything happened, I immediately saw what I was doing. And partially, I wish that I could have stopped it earlier, either like backed off real quick or something, rather than you facing all of that, really. But then I also took a moment and written down in my notebook that if I really truly believe in my work and what it stands for, it should not be easily discouraged. So, and understand that people are going to have different perspectives, might even compare it. But that also means that I also need to really believe in my work. That if someone challenges it or even belittles it, because this was not even an example of you belittling it or downplaying it, this was just you trying to be in the conversation. So then it showcased that I have a lot of work to do in that area of my work, because pretty sure if I talk to enough people, there's going to be a couple people who don't agree with it, who are going to try to push it down, and I need to have that inside me. And it was interesting because even though I was showcasing a bubble map to get out of your ways, I was able to use part of it to bring myself down and remind myself, like, this is not a bad experience, this is not a good experience, it's just an experience. But overall, it started out bad. It was going into a good to a bad, then it turned into a good, and then reminding myself it's just the experience. And I know my main point when clarifying to you that it was not your fault, because I know you felt really, really bad. Kind of like, oh shit, I ruined something again, or I did something to cause, you pain. And to me, I realized, like, with the way I handled things, that this could pose a bigger effect on you, because I don't know what you've been through like that. I don't know what you faced on a daily basis, maybe as a kid or even now, you know? So to me, I was really keen on trying to fix or at least clarify what happened, how it happened, and to reassure it wasn't your fault. Because I don't want to create an environment for you to think like, well, if I say something, I'm going to hurt your feelings, or if I say something, I'm going to ruin something, because regardless, people are going to get hurt, whether you do it on purpose or not, because we're human, we're not robots, sadly. And after like taking that moment to explain and reassure you that like I'm not mad at you anymore. It wasn't even mad at you, really. It was more just reliving something from my past that I believed you were doing. But then I quickly realized, like, as soon as I finished, like, saying, like, I don't even want to do this, I was like, wait, this is not even, like, a good thing to do. So, I know it's going to linger for some time, and I'm really sorry because I don't want you to feel that way ever. And I know that you want to be considerate in how you speak and how you feel, but it's also my obligation to keep myself in check when those things happen, because of course, like, when it happened, I wasn't like silent. I actually talked to you throughout it. I was like, told you and reminded you, like, oh, what happened, and that it wasn't your fault.
In a way, kind of like, I don't mind seeing that part of you. I just feel bad for kind of like making it happen, even though it was no one's fault and no one was to blame. Kind of like shucks, like shit. Like I made you sad, and I'm sorry if I made you sad.
I mean, even I apologize too, because I acted out, maybe not in the worst possible, but it was, to me, I felt like it was hurtful to you, like on a mental level. And I don't want you to ever feel like you can't express yourself or censor yourself, because living like that is not helpful and it doesn't really promote anything. But even that whole situation, I even wrote down, because like, it posed off that I had no motivation or spark to work on it anymore. But then legit, as I was like, wait, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel discouraged? I started writing down all my thoughts of like, well, why am I easily discouraged? And then it even prompted me to further progress my bubble map even further into a different level. So in a weird way, you have helped me progress the bubble map. How do you feel about that?
It's both a blessing and a curse. So I'm kind of like, I apologize for putting you through of what you felt back then, or what you experienced back then. But it also was a good thing, because that further tested on what you were thinking, and it brought you more into clarity. I was just thinking like, no one was in the wrong, words were said, and we have different perspectives. So it put you through your perspective, but then it also relayed to you of my perspective, and it worked out well of what we both were thinking, and how do we explain it, and what perspectives of us that we can take from each other.
Yeah, because I would say, like, even in the moment, the deep hurt of me being vulnerable and showcasing about, like, oh, this is my work. I'm vulnerable. I'm excited. I'm like, a bunch of emotions are happening because this is my child. This is my baby. But then once I noticed like what I was doing, and I could see beyond the effects of like, oh shit, I do not want him to feel like he can't talk freely, and I kind of had to push myself, because instinctually I did not want to talk about my ideas anymore. I didn't want to bring them up anymore. Like that was me, my hurt version of myself. Like, just don't do it. You don't want to get hurt. You already got hurt already, so just don't do it again. But then I also knew that this was also heavily on me too, because then it was like, do I either just continue that ongoing routine of I'm hurt, so now I'm just gonna back away completely, or do I actually face it right now and push through? And it was very uncomfortable for me, because I was like, I usually like to decompress by myself or take a second, but it pushed me further towards the person I want to be more level-headed when things go wrong, and be able to speak on it, to articulate it properly. And I would say that this experience has pushed me to be better and be okay with being comfortable, because legit, I did not want to speak on it anymore. But I also knew that this was on me, so I had to be the one to fix it.
And I was kind of like, in a way, it's not a bad experience to be in. It's like I'm learning more stuff about you, or my more lore building on what makes you think a certain way, and how does that make you feel, or what you experienced. So I'm taking more consideration out of it, and more knowledge building.
What would you say you gained, or you haven't really gained anything?
I say I gained more of your perspective on how you share ideas, or how you would feel if certain ways or certain aspects of it would collide with your ideas. Because again of what you told me, and how it causes you to think that way, or think of that way emotionally and logically, and that's very crucial information later on. But just to like let it sink in my mind and think about it.
But if another situation were to happen like this, what would you do differently?
I think I'll be more in tone on how you feel. Not necessarily think badly for myself, but mostly think of you more. Kind of like, oh shit, like I said something, and this is not time for feel bad. I can feel bad for myself later, but right now, like, I need to explain and be more close to you, of like, hey, like, I'm sorry for what I did, and I apologize. Like, that's not anything of what I said or what I meant, but I want to know more. If you let me get close to you, of how you felt or how you were feeling, and just reassure you that like nothing bad came out of it, and just be close to you.
I actually think the quite opposite. I would prefer the harsh truth of like, because I understand that you're coming from a place of love, and that you want to reassure me and be like, I didn't mean to do this to you, and I'm really sorry about it. But it's also kind of like, I'm someone that likes the hard truth. Even emotionally, I might not like it, but on a logical level, I need it, you know? And to me, it's more of, this happened, and I guess it's kind of like, I don't want you to like censor yourself, or even focus solely on my emotions when this happens, because that doesn't help me further become better as a person. It just showcases that my emotions are important in the moment, But it's like sometimes you just need a nugget of logic to kick you out of it. You get me? So I think like maybe like a compromise of like you could say sorry, I feel, if you actually feel bad. But I also want logic to play heavily into it because that's what would be best. Because it's kind of like if I solely focus on your emotions, it depends on how it's like handled. Because it could either reinforce that like I'm not gonna go there because I do not want to hurt you. I don't want that. I want it to be I accidentally went there. How do we get through it? You got me? So I get what you're saying though. Do you have any last thoughts?
I think brutal honesty, it's heavily helps either between a relationship, a friendship, or just someone you know about, because in that way you're telling someone how you actually feel and what they interpret or how they see it. And necessarily that's not a bad thing of like what you mentioned. I think people don't really hear that a lot, or they don't really want to face that, like that brutality of it. Cause like, yeah, like it could be hurtful and it could like be non-considerate, but in the end it's the truth.
Yeah.
And it's like you're just being honest, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's not like a sugar-coated lie.
Mm.
So I think honesty like is very should be very be based upon every encounter that you see, or any encounter that you interact with.
Because I also think it depends on the person, right?
Yeah.
Because some people might like need that emotional reassurance first and then are open to that logic.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I've gotten to the point where it also comes down to trust and understanding people's intentions. You get me? Like if I don't know you and you do something like that, I'm gonna take it personal. Because I'm like, I don't know who you are, I don't know your intentions. But I also need to trust you to a degree of like, okay, your intentions are not to hurt me. Both like on a relationship level,
Mm-hmm.
but also on a generalized level, like to have that train of thought of no one's trying to hurt me, even if they're trying to hurt me, but nobody's like doing it on purpose. So like to have that detachment, to have like that standing ground, if that makes sense. Because I know with my friend Cot, he whenever I get into really bad situations, I talk to him, right? And I express to him about what's going on, and he tells me, do you need emotional support right now? Like, do you want me to reassure you? And I'm like, no, give me the fucking hard truth. And he's just like, and he lets me have it. And it kind of shocks me out of my feelings of just like, oh, and I have to take it in. But that's because he and I have such a close relationship, and I understand his intentions are not to hurt me. You get me? So I think I need to trust your intentions for sure and not project, because that's not your business, and also not that's not even on you either, you know? And once again, I do apologize because that was not a cool situation. Do you have anything else to say?
I want to apologize too. Like, I'm sorry. Like, even in that moment, like, it was nobody's fault, but I just do genuinely feel bad about yesterday. Like, oh man, like, I didn't mean or didn't want to lead like anything that's related to that, but it still happened, and I'm glad that we got through it. And I think with the honesty part, I think it's just like, I think a form of consent has to follow with it, because a person may not be ready to hear the honesty inside other people. So it's kind of like, if you want to approach someone who's feeling emotionally and who's feeling kind of like down, logical sense of thinking like is to like emotionally comfort them and tell them that everything's okay. But you also kind of want to ask them like, hey, is it okay if I be honest with you? Or is it okay if I tell you of what I think or feel about the situation? So that way you're giving them a heads up, like, either what I'm gonna say is not gonna help you in any way, but it's what I think logically, and it's what I think it's best to say right now, instead of holding it in later on for a further future conversation, and then that person kind of relating to like, oh, why didn't you say this? But like, I like earlier and stuff, instead of like festering and saying it now.
Yeah.
I think like a form of verbal warning, like, oh, like I'm gonna say something, but you may not like it. So are you prepared to like handle it?
Like, do you have the mental capacity to actually absorb what I'm about to say, or is it going to further hurt you emotionally?
Yeah.
And we need a minute before we even hit that. That makes sense. Yeah, no, that's how I go with my friends too. I'm just like, hey, what do you need? Do you need an ear, like me just listening? Do you want advice? Do you want my opinion? Or do you just want comfort right now? And then usually they're like, oh, I'll take comfort or whatever. And then I'll just do that. Because I feel like people don't say that. They kind of assume like, oh, you should know what I want, of like, I need you to listen to me. But then you're like, you come from a genuine want to help them. So you say advice instead. And it's like, that's not what I wanted. I just wanted you to listen to me, you know?
But overall, I'm glad that this experience happened, because it further kind of like, it strengthens of future interactions if we do have something like this relating to it, or it gives experience.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that I record this. I'm hoping it's still recording.
Imagine it's not recording.
That would be terrible. But I think it's an important thing to document, because it's very human. And I still do feel bad. I still have that 1% of feeling bad because of what I did. And I know you still have that 1% of feeling bad. I don't think I handled it the best way I could, sadly. But then it also makes me want to be better in the future, because I don't want this to be a habit. And even though I might have felt uncomfortable in showing you my work after being hurt, but I do understand you're just trying to put into the conversation, and I can't be mad at you for that. So it just reinforces that this is on me. And weirdly enough, it applies to the bubble map. That's it. You good now?
Thank you for listening.
Oh my God. Bye.
Bye.